Hello and welcome to the Writing from the Womb podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar and I have LaNita here with me. Thank you so much for joining me, LaNita.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hold on. So we're going to get started today. LaNita is a poet and we've connected around therapeutic poetry writing from the womb as the source of our writings. I've shared my story about that many times as I've been leading these writing from the womb workshops and sharing about my poetry book. Just the process of writing from that place inside, that deep inner voice that seems to arise from deep in the belly, from the womb, is so therapeutic to reconnect us to our inner resources and our inner guidance and our soul. The womb is the portal that our spirit comes through to be embodied in our body. And so when we connect to that, then we're connecting directly to our divine self. And so so much wisdom and healing can come from just making that connection and then writing down the messages and the words that come from that place. So I want to start us off with a poem from my book, and then I'll invite LaNita to share from her poetry too. So my book is called Goddesses, Lovers, and Dreams. And I have a poem here pulled up to share from that. It's called Choosing to Love. Choosing to love in this world sometimes feels like walking upstream, thigh deep, against a strong current. It feels so good to push and plunge, legs proving their strength against the constant gush. The chosen love must be stronger than the river to withstand noticing how little progress can be made despite so much effort. The chosen love must remember how much effort it takes to stand still, resist being swept away, and know this is progress enough. The chosen love must be content with stooping down, picking up a beautiful stone from the bottom, and holding it up to the sun to dry. And when weary of the struggle, the chosen love must love surrender to the currents of the unknown river, trusting to be carried to the sea, where all but love is washed away. So that's a nourishing one to start our podcast episode out with. That one always reminds me of the essence of what's important, and that the beauty of surrender and letting go is such a relief at a certain moment when that's what's called for. So I'd love to hear your reflections on this and your inspirations about writing from the womb and that the therapeutic value of that. If you'd like to share a little bit more about your process around that.
Yes, thank you. So beautiful. What a nourishing way to start. I felt the cleansing of the river. I'm really into astrology, so a lot of a lot of language would be in alignment naturally with the astrological language, and so it just felt like that cleansing water essence. So thank you for starting with that. Yes, just in reflection of that poem and why I was so interested in coming and sharing and talking with you on this podcast. I don't speak about my poetry too often, but a few years back, I really finally claimed I am a poet. It took me a long time coming up with, greats like Maya Angelou. She was a poet to me. And so a lot of my years, I reflected myself upon people like her and thought, oh, I'm not really a poet. But as my personal and mother journey connected me to the womb of the earth, my womb also began to purge. So that poem was really, for me, so much about, for me, I felt the womb of the earth in that poem. And that's really what I write to, and who I write to and where I write from is this connection that's been developing between me and the earth, and this love affair that I've been experiencing for some years now. And it's just amazing to be with Sistren and being able to talk about this, having the platform to be able to speak about it. So thank you. I don't have anything planned specifically. I'm just going to share my heart. And Yeah, so that's really what writing from the womb is about to me, is the reconnection that I've been growing into of myself and Mother Earth, and the divine guidance that she's giving me. I feel like, and the poem that I want to read today is actually called Ancient Future. I have a few, but I wanted to read this one specifically because this crazy year is, right? Like 2020 is a year to remember, one for the books for sure. And yet we also have been here before, right? Like humanity cycles through things over and over again. And there were times in the past that were way worse than 2020. And the earth, she provides me this guidance of how I can actually show up for my community, how I can show up for myself and for my children with pure nourishment, like that poem, with this cleansing of her, of the guarantee of rebirth and of the guarantee, let's just say of the guarantee of rebirth. So I wish actually now I have a few really poems that are especially great for this podcast. But unfortunately I don't have those ones right here. But I did want to read, this will be one that I offer. Ancient Future is the title of this poem. Clearly I see some future moments. They hold within them fruits of love, labored from hands that do not live in these moments, land healing, producing for its family tree. Visions of the beast within the human, searching this plane free, expanding upon ancestral duties, releasing the creative energy boiling within. Times of woman and man living in a technologically self-sustained city, teeming with diverse, nourished souls, new human beings being written in the stars, as above, so below, the center spins the top and bottom around. We finally overcome motion sickness and we simultaneously answer the heart's call. New comes from old, moving free with the cycles. I receive my feed from these visions. The clarity of one fertilizes my soul. Cradled by friends, family, Mother Earth's reflective gift to us all. Opportunity to grow, heal, be reborn, opportunity to change our world. Listening closer now, structuring the vision. And that was a poem that is in an anthology that I co-published with a group of artists and authors. Is this one in Canada too? Definitely in the United States. I think we're actually in a couple different, I think we're up in Canada too, called Ancient Future, available on Amazon.com if you're interested. A lot of beautiful poetry in there. But that's the message that I want to bring to the people right now is, 2020, wow, what a year, right? Clarity for so many on so many levels. But just remember, we've been here before, and we have an unconditional loving womb mother that births life over and over and over and over again. And she never turns her back on her children. And she's always giving us what we need, whether we like it or not. So.
Beautiful. I just actually had did another podcast recording earlier today with my mother, and we read, and I read a poem about that, about how divine mother is really nourishing us all the time, and if we reconnect to that, then that fills the gaps of whatever hungers and needs that our human structured limited reality is falling short of. And so what you said really related to that as well. And this practice of choosing love that I wrote about in the poem that I read is also this way that we can become that mother, that divine mother energy. And the way you described that that we have this divine mother that's rebirthing us again and again, and that's a model of life and of nature, that if we look at it that way, we can surrender to that river flowing, carrying us and taking care of us. Whereas this idea of having to fight against the rhythms of nature is, I feel like, what we're being asked to let go of and return to the loving lap of Mother Earth, of Mother Nature. And Divine Mother is all one and the same, and trust in that life regenerative power of the womb, of the great womb, of our individual wombs. And so I'd love to hear more reflections from you on that, like, you know, these visions of this, of what we're growing into, of human evolution, of what we might create. These visions feel like they come from that life regenerative womb space. And I'd love to hear about how you connect with that, and how you translate that into these poems that you're writing about that.
Yes, thank you. And I, just because you prompted this, there's another poem in this book actually that I'd love to read too, about ancestry, because my response is, you know, it's literally in our blood and in my blood. And yeah, I believe that what's been happening, at least for me personally, I can only speak on my personal journey, but as I continue to reach out into the community and allow my community to expand, I keep meeting sistren and brethren as well, that are like, yeah, that's my experience too. So this is obviously a very universal thing happening here, but just to preface, everything I'm saying is from my experience. I feel my blood boiling. I feel my ancestors in me, kind of sick and tired of people being sick and tired. I feel our ancestors demanding us to cleanse and to rebuild and to rebirth on deep cellular, solar levels. And in that, the deepest for me, like the most important recognition is that the dark never goes away. To me, that's the hardest part of being alive, is that we want to think that at some point in time, all the dark will go away, and all the death and all the destruction, and it will just stop, and we will have this utopia of perfection. And it's just not what life is about. You know, perfection is the ability to die and to break down to feed the next generation. That is perfection. The only thing that is stable in nature is change. So I feel like this deep ancestral wisdom is, you know, is brewing in us. I actually recently learned that in 400 years, all humans have 4,000 grandparents in 400 years. That's a lot of ancestry just 400 years back. And those people would be spread out all over the world in many different cultures and races and everything. I feel that wisdom in me, demanding me and my family. I've been watching my family kind of almost die off from kidney disease. I'm watching and feeling this wisdom say, look, you know, you're from warrior blood and you're not trying hard enough. and that's the message that I hear. So yeah, let me read this poem actually. It's called Words for the Ancestors. You move with the freedom of the wind, maintaining our eternal flow. As your time is spent again, you blend in with the fluid soul. Your memory is saved, opening spinal flows, releasing into the one. Brilliance becomes more available. Your sweet nature ripens in our core. You desire to move with the currents. The message must soar, must move. Electrocutions igniting our source. New moments appear. New messages to hear, and I call on you. My awareness is preparing. Your sensations will increase my flow. I request the information though. I know we need to see before and after. We need to be confirmed of the hereafter. the basics of being, the unity of seeing, the way things move in and out of existence, how the physical levels are always in movement from here to somewhere. The details, you know, we call for these downloads. Cycles repeat. These current ones need deeper exploring, short-term controlling to move things forward, aspects of us knowing their power, exercising. I trust us fully, and what I desire to see matters too. My voice was birthed with the same intention, so I call for the ancestors' guidance. Show me how to learn the words, to penetrate the silence. Our paths are a shared experience. Immerse me with our core. The immaculate, immanent, the one which all grows from. We kneel and we bow our heads. We pay homage to your divine steps, the path you took this trip home. We know we will meet again. Perception from the aware soul, the energy to live. My heart is budding within, charging, feeling your breath. It smells like spring. They say this is the age of knowing. Grateful to know you.
Such a journey with the ancestors.
And I feel like they are just putting a pressure on humans. So it's going to look like death and destruction and rebirth and light as well. And you know, as we tune in and we align with the earth, we get that truth. Yeah, and it's just this truest peace that I've ever known.
Right, to connect with that cycle of transformation and trust in that cycle of transformation, trust in the support of the ancestors and these powers greater than us. You know, if every person alive today, billions and billions of people, has thousands and thousands of ancestors. The way I learned it, we were calculating it in an ancestral healing group that I was in, that once you go back 13 generations, you have 8,000 ancestors. And it goes, I know, and it goes back farther than that too. And pretty soon, you and I mean, if I have 8,000 ancestors and you have 8,000 ancestors, well, it's not like there's that much more people back then. There was less people back then. So we all have shared ancestors at a certain point. We're all the same family.
True indeed.
Because the farther you go back, the more ancestors there are and the fewer people there were. So pretty soon, it's like everybody came from that same first person, that same first mother, right? And so, you know, that brings up a sense of peace in that, okay, can we work out our differences? Can we work out our tendency for conflict? And if we look at our blood family, our, you know, immediate family, and notice all of the conflict that we might have within our immediate family, and yet there's all this love, hopefully, right, for most people, that overcomes the conflict. Well, then if we see the people that we don't see as our immediate family as family, then perhaps we can extend that love and overcome those conflicts as well. Yeah.
Yeah, just like you could even speak a word to the people. My goodness, it's so powerful. And it's, you know, from my personal like childhood, I had some family that did some really kind of, you know, messed up things, and that's love too, right? So like in this time right now, I really want people to just consider that, the depth of what you just said, because yeah, you know, like let's say we can put a name like well, let's just say like, you know, what word can I use? We'll just say our current, you know, administration in our world, in our country. You know, there's so much to say of negativity about this person and the family and the history and all these things about, you know, who he is, but he's exactly the same. There's no difference of the human connection that all of the humans on earth are a part of. And we have to trust his ancestry too. You know, we can't, it's really dangerous when humans decide that my vision, my ideas, my history, my truth is the only truth. Every single human has that ancestry, and that ancestry is perfect in its creation. What it's doing, what, you know, the energy of its blood continuing on is exactly how it's supposed to be. And when you get into astrology and you start to watch the sky and you start to really tune into these frequency languages, which is really what she's been putting into us, is a frequency language. You see that these cycles are repetitive and they come and go over and over and over again. And it's the only way we grow and we change. There's no other way to change over time without, first off, the same thing happening again and being challenged to continue to grow within that. And so it hurts, you know, it hurt for my home to be, you know, sometimes the most scariest place for me. That was hard. And now, as an evolving human, I'm able to take that harder love and expand that open to people who will never meet, and call everyone my family and everyone my sister and brethren, and say, well, if I can forgive my mother and I can love my mother and I can love myself and I don't have to have shame, guess what? I can do that for you too. Yeah, just, ooh, what a word. You told it, sister.
Yeah, well, and the challenge, however, is to also recognize that our wounding, our ancestral wounding, can often make us behave very badly and perpetuate that wounding that's unaddressed. And it will do so, you know, by design, so that it keeps coming into our awareness that, oh, wow, this hurts again, and this hurts again. And wow, I thought I'd done some healing around that, and I thought I'd overcome that, and here it is again, hurting. And, you know, a lot of people that, one of the coping mechanisms for that is to hurt others to protect oneself. And that's one pattern of dealing with unresolved trauma and wounding from the past and from our ancestry. And there's a lot of lineages of ancestry that that, you know, have that as the main pattern. You know, a lot of our European ancestry has that, okay, I'm going to dominate others, I'm going to take power away from others, and that's going to keep me safe. And we're seeing the detrimental effects of that, not just on the others that lineage is hurting, continuing to hurt, but also within that, the people of that lineage themselves. There's huge amounts of self-abuse, and, you know, within those families, and long histories of mental illness and addiction, and just really painful patterns in the dominator lineage. For sure, it does not create happy people to be the dominators. It does not. There's an illusion that it might, but it doesn't, because if I were to dominate somebody else, I would become dependent on them, me being able to take their power away from them to have any power for myself. And being a dominator comes from a place of not having any connection to your own inner power and needing to steal power from others and take from others. And that emptiness inside perpetuates that greed, that taking, that domination of others. But that emptiness inside never gets filled by stealing from other people and by dominating other people. It just gets more and more empty. So there's a huge illness that's being unaddressed in the people that have that as their method of coping with life and unresolved wounding. And then, of course, there's the people who've been dominated, the lineage of peoples that have been dominated. At this point, most of us have a mixed lineage where there's, you know, regardless of what country our ancestors were originally from, or what continent, or, you know, any of that, there's always been dominators and people, you know, or I wouldn't say always, since patriarchy took over, okay, since patriarchy started dominating everyone in that way, in all cultures and countries and lineages of people that have been in the patriarchal model or have been influenced by the patriarchal model, that domination. There's always been people, even within the same family, the same tribe, the same country. There's the people that dominate and the people that are dominated. And so, yes, the being of the, you know, people that have been dominated, like being a woman, for example, or being of an oppressed culture or race, right? Indigenous people or African descent, that have been enslaved, or, you know, things like that. That has its own set of wounding that then unaddressed can be perpetuated in a variety of ways as well. And one way, you know, that I see is that we start to try to become the dominator, like a lot of feminism, for example, is about that, becoming the dominator, right? Becoming more masculine, positioning yourself, internalizing those values. And that doesn't do the healing either. It doesn't really heal that wounding either. So yes, it's all this powerful dynamic of human experience where all the different parts and pieces and roles that people are playing have this rich learning for us to learn. And then we get to learn from that, right? If we have a lifetime or an ancestor that was very domineering and played that domination role, we get to heal the underbelly of that stolen power, emptiness. And if we have an ancestor or identify with a certain culture or identity that has been dominated, we get to heal that aspect of things. But ultimately, we've all had all of those lineages and all of those ancestral experiences. So any little piece of it that we're identifying with today in this lifetime is healing back through the generations. And so that's my focus and that's what I feel the womb gives us, and how we can regenerate life out of the ashes of whatever pain or suffering or wounding is that we get to learn how to regenerate life, how to be reborn from whatever pain has happened. Boy, I just went on and on there for a minute.
So beautiful, though. I mean, I agree with you, fully. My journey took me to agriculture, which is what began patriarchy. So I agree, and I was anti-civilization for years because I realized that it's actually society and living in cities and living unnatural lifestyles that is actually creating all of what we call our this horrific past of ours. It's actually because we stopped roaming the earth and moving the seasons and living in tune, and we sat down and we started having ownership of grains and land, and that's where that patriarchy really started to develop. So it's so challenging because, are we ready to let go of the luxuries of our modern society? I don't think so. I don't see too many humans that are actually ready to make the real personal accountable changes that we have to do to be truly free from what is really ailing us. What's the real illness is society itself, really, for me.
Yeah. Well, there's a part of that because I've asked this question too. How did this all start? How could we have gotten on such a self-destructive path as a species, right? Because some of the patterns we see perpetuated in our species as a whole are just so self-destructive. And how could this be? And one of the theories I've heard this one relating it to agriculture and all of this, but a theory or a way of looking at it that stands out to me even more strongly and resonates more clearly about that is this theory that there was a great cataclysm where, like a big meteor, and there's actual geological evidence of this, like the Gulf of Mexico is said to have been formed by a meteor striking the earth. And that before that meteor struck the earth, the the axis of the earth rotated parallel to the sun, and there was no seasons. It was always the same year round wherever you were on the planet. And so people populated areas that had a continuous season throughout the year and had continuous food supply, and being hunter-gatherers was a viable thing year round, in certain areas on the planet. And it was stable and predictable, and there was no need to plan ahead or try to, do anything to make things work better than they were. And then this meteor hit the planet, knocked it off its axis of rotation, and caused all kinds of environmental destruction and challenge, which traumatized lots of people because suddenly everything was unstable, people died, all this. So this collective trauma, environmental trauma, planted the seed of not being able to trust Mother Nature and disconnection from Mother Nature, and the need to start planning ahead, to collect seeds, to hoard resources, to plant, to grow things, and started that whole thing. And then getting territorial, and that initial trauma created the need and the adaptation of becoming, more territorial and having to fight each other for limited resources and all of that. So it just develops into this whole theory of because prior to that, there's archaeological evidence that says humans were quite peaceful and didn't have big wars and overthrow each other or dominate each other, back when there were little goddess statues everywhere. there wasn't a whole lot of that going on. And so that's one theory, is that there was this big collective trauma that we're still not healed from, that we're still perpetuating the same harm. And at first, some of those, just like when we're children, if we're traumatized as children, at first, those coping mechanisms for those circumstances are adaptive, right? It helps us get through our childhood. But then as we become adults, they become self-destructive, and we have to unlearn. And the only way to unlearn those is to heal from those original traumas. So for me, trauma recovery and the deeper and deeper healing on that level of reprogramming, of deprogramming our cells and our systems from being in stress mode and looking for animosity everywhere, to being in peace and bliss and pleasure mode. And so that's why things like yoga and herbal medicine and all of these things help us to reprogram that, and having trauma-informed healing modalities that are just blossoming all over the place. People are really starting to become aware of how important it is to heal, not only from the traumas of our lifetime, ancestral traumas, and farther back. So I feel like we're all on a real journey. And this writing from the womb work, I'm so glad you brought up the ancestry stuff, because a lot of my writing and these workshops that I've been leading, writing from the womb workshops, a lot of ancestral healing starts to come up as we really connect with the womb. It seems like you were saying, the ancestors are calling to us, the ancestors are calling us forth and putting, really making demands on us. It's time to evolve, it's time to grow, it's time to heal. And the writing process is so wonderful at helping us to reconnect with that ancestral wisdom. There, I went on again.
Urgent. I could say so much to that, but we can't just talk forever. So I'm so thankful for poetry. The earth definitely, just gave me this outlet of being able to express the deepest, ways in which we see. It's just been amazing. I haven't been writing much the last couple of years. And I'm actually getting ready to change my name. So I'll be a new author, a new poet in the future. But LaNita Nash, as a poet, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's something I needed to be able to claim being a poet first. And that's the definition of the first third or so of my life. So yeah, thank you for just creating this platform for poets to share their words and their deep emotions. I'm really writing to my lover, and it is the earth. I've been in this passionate love affair with her for some years now, and I'm really just trying to write to her and get back to her and find some way to bond with her always, and that's the writing. And as I write to her, I can write that same love letter to everyone. So yeah, the most beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, aren't we all part of the earth? We're all.
That's actually what I was going to say. So let me just put this in here, because there were so many things I wanted to say, but so, oh my gosh, literally we're all part of the earth. She told me some years ago that, you know, I'm what you would consider biracial. I don't play into political structures. I'm not into categories and defining myself based on other people's opinions. So I personally don't claim race. It is a made up structure, human invention. It's not real. So, but I'm made up of quote unquote two races. My mother would be what people call white, and my father would be what people call black. And being a biracial human in a racial world, it's really weird because you're truly neither one of those races, and you're actually a third new race. But that no one actually accepts that. No one actually will accept that I'm a new race. But the only way that racism is real or works is if I'm a new race, and I'm not. The earth gave me this message some years ago that, you know, we literally have been birthed from her. Life literally is birthed from her. And although that's really hard to think about when we think of like that first human, life has been birthed from the dirt of the earth. And so when she births people, I also have a very different idea of what the earth looks like and what we live on. And so I'm speaking in those terms, but when she births life, you know, where the sun spends the most time at is what we call the equator, and bodies that come from that part of the world are always dark brown and always have curly hair and flat, broad noses, or those general characteristics, because that's how their bodies do well with the sun all year. And their cultures are what you were just talking about, those yin cultures of consistent food. And why do we need to argue and fight and yell and look around? We don't have to fight over mango. There's 100,000 of them. As you move away from that warm, juicy core where everything births from, and the people move away, then we get into really harsh environments, and you start to see cultures that reflect that. So I see something different that we're living on. I don't see us living on what scientists say we're living on. I see a different experience when I watch the sky. And I think that it's just challenging because we can be told any lie about the past and can't confirm it. So the only thing we can actually confirm is self-accountability and the message that we have from within ourselves. And that's what I feel my ancestors are saying to me is, hey, you human soul, you better try harder or we're gonna kill you off too, because there's a lot of us, there's a lot of weak genetics on the earth, a lot of weak genetics. And it's time for some changes. So I don't know, this conversation could go so many places, Sama. But
well, it sounds like perhaps part 2 of our conversation might be good, perhaps on the Womb Centered Healing podcast, where we can get even more into the ancestral healing and transformation that the ancestors are asking us to go through right now. So perhaps keep an eye out, listeners, for that. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, LaNita, find out, you know, to connect with you more about your poetry and your work, and perhaps even be kept up to date about your new name and your new poetry that you'll be writing, how might they best connect with you?
Yes, thank you. I'm actually quite a bit online. I'm mostly known as an herbalist and as a plant lady. I'm an unschooling mom as well. So I have a few books that have been published. You can definitely find them on Amazon.com, or you can find me at LaNitaNash.com for consultation and more of my business services. And then for herb knowledge, plant knowledge, the plants speak to me, and I really try. I feel it's my duty to take their message and share it with the people. Alignwithplants.com, ALIGN with plants with an S on the end.com. I would also say if you're on Facebook, friend me on Facebook. I share a lot on there, building a really large community as far as I can around the world of all of the healers that are all hearing the call because we're stronger together. So yeah, tune in. You can send me an email also at info@alignwithplants.com. Send me a DM. I'm pretty accessible and open to building. So please, if you just need support in general or you like the vibe, reach out.
Awesome, LaNita. Well, I certainly am glad that I reached out to you for sure, and that I follow all of your posts and really enjoy what you're putting out there in the world. And I'm very blessed to be able to have this conversation with you. And listeners also know that if you would like to participate in the Writing from the Womb workshops, you can go to Eventbrite, which is the event hosting site that I'm hosting putting those workshops out there on, and look for Writing from the Womb. You can look for the Womb-Centered Healing Temple there as well, and there are other workshops besides Writing from the Womb hosted there from the Womb-Centered Healing Temple. So I look forward to seeing you perhaps in upcoming workshops. And LaNita, I look forward to another podcast at some point. So thank you so much, everyone.
Can I say, Sama, actually,
Please.
I wanted to offer this.
What's up?
So this is a community poetry anthology that I published. We're actually doing another one this year. We're calling it 2020 an Anthology. Submissions are due September 22nd by midnight. Email your submissions to info@alignwithplants.com or send me a message. I'll get you hooked up. 500-word max, short story or poetry. You can submit up to 3. But it's all about 2020 is going to go down in history, and there's going to be like one major story told about 2020. Let's not let that be. Let's make sure our voice is a part of 2020 as well, and that we let the people of the future know, hey, 2020 was actually a really diverse year with many different stories and inspirations. So 2020 an Anthology submissions are open. Call for submissions. Deadline is September 22nd, and you can email me at info@alignwithplants.com your submission. So that too. Wanted to make sure I told it.
Yes, thank you. And we'll put those links and the description of that in the show notes for this podcast, because I would love to, and I'll work with you about. I'd love to help promote that. Where we promote this podcast, we can also share about that. So to get those writers who are writing it out this year, oh my goodness, and then let our voices be heard. So
yeah, it's
beautiful.
20, guys. It's our year of clear vision. So
yes.
Don't let it happen in vain. You know, if you're a writer, history has been written by a few. So we have the power to publish a book now in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I also help authors with publishing too, so that's something else I can support. But yes, awesome. Thank you, Sama, and I hope that you submit as well.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, LaNita. And that's all for now. Until next time.